I read a lot about philosophy, poetry, mysticism, and about what's inside the soul, what's invisible on the surface of life. I think the time has arrived to talk about the things inside us that are crying, that are angry, that are upset. There seems like there's some sort of bridge that no one will cross, as if we're looking for that bridge, but it hasn't been built yet. So then we're coming to a place where what would the bridge be built with? And when I speak of a bridge, I'm speaking of what's on the other side. We want everything to change. We want the political systems to collapse. The major institutions that have been around for 2,000 years, working on us, working on our children, working on our parents, our grandparents, which fortunately is all inside us. It doesn't get forgotten. It comes up almost every single day in moments where you think you're doing something else that you don't want to do are all these thoughts. And those thoughts are the thoughts of many that have existed in you or those before you. I live in a place where I live in the west of Ireland, which long ago was considered the edge of the world. Some people called it the Enchanted Isles. Others called it the Island of Death. But at this place, at a time when Western white civilization decided to name places and reinvent something called history, is I think what they call it. This was the place where, to me, everything got dumped. Everything invisible, everything undiscussed, and often things that remain hidden. We know for a fact that the monks in the Dark Ages were dotted around different parts of the west of Ireland, and they kept a certain form of history, written history, alive. But of course, those monks were you and me, who didn't always follow the rules. Because not everybody did. Many of them have been written out of history, of course, but as time goes by, there's always been those who have researched or looked for those hidden renegades, pirates, or the new name is the Mask of Anonymous. I think it's time to remove the element of anonymous from our lives. I think it's time for us to really talk about what's personally affected us, and that personal effect is fear spreading upon other people's lives. It's very difficult to take responsibility for every single one of your actions. Much of that comes from being pushed along all the time, being pushed to really nowhere. They call it the future. What is the future? It's 2014 right now. The millennium has gone on, over a decade has passed, and I'm still looking for the future. You know, the films that you used to watch when you were a kid, the science fiction. Of course, that was always technology and war, but I think the future that we all want now is one where it's cooperative. We're all working together, that there's enough for everyone. It's not in competition. It's also not in the extent of power being imposed upon us so that I can look down on you, you can look down on me. It doesn't work. The world we want right now is probably being written in each and every one of us. We participate in that creation. As an artist, I find that the language of the arts has been kept away for the past decade or so for a reason, because it's filled with hope. It puts you in a mindset of possibility, of something that's maybe not known yet, but there's a chance. How does a dream become a reality? I'm going to go back to the bridge I was talking about earlier, the one that I say we need to build. And as I said earlier, the bricks and mortar of memory, of dreams, cannot be made in fear for that bridge to be solid, for that bridge to be walkable by those who may not make it to the other side, but want to believe that it exists. I think the biggest thing that's going on right now is there's a sense of responsibility that falls upon the shoulders of people that have been struggling for many years. And a lot of people don't want to carry that. I'm at an age where the past decade and a half has made it very known that certain elements are not needed in the world. Entertainment is more important. Culture is more important. But those two aspects of human evolution, as you can see, pass by the millisecond. Consumption. You consume culture. You consume ideas that are presented to you. But what happens when they're your own ideas? They become very precious. They become like the people of the past that invented in their tiny little workshops, or the alchemists of the Dark Ages that spent many years, but in their lives they didn't think of years. They thought of a single pursuit of something that could become bigger than themselves. And that's a place that we're at right now. You think, I'm going to build the bridge for myself, and I'm going to cross over, and I'm going to leave everybody behind. But that would hurt, wouldn't it? Because you get to the other side and you'd be alone. And in the world we live in, they've created these islands of all of us, living alone, feeling like your problems are the worst problems, that no one cares, nobody knows the depth of your misery, how hard it's been. But in fact, if you would just cross over, you would realize and be humbled that someone else has had it worse, and maybe even better. But for the one that has it better, there's still a loneliness in that, because real joy is only joy when it is shared. We have the mechanism of the internet to share what joy we experience alone, and then we share it with people on the internet, and loads of people get to enjoy it with you, and that gives us great joy. Some would say it's like a form of popularity. I think it's just how you approach it. But I still go back to the idea of the bridge, the place where we want to cross over. I know it's dark right now, and I know there's an aspect of using the language crossing over as having something to do with death. And this is the part that doesn't really get talked about. The part where right now, basically probably 1 in 3 of your friends has lost somebody very close to them, very suddenly, or too early. This is what I call the kind of invisible connection. But time and love are changing this, because when you lose someone that's very close to you, the game changes, the world changes, and you stop participating in what's being put upon you. Certain things stop mattering. and certain people's attitudes stop bothering you. But what I want to say about the other side and the language of that, because people might think I'm saying crossing over, leaving this world, and there have been many that have not made it, don't see a point, don't see a purpose. I don't blame them. I have had my dark moments, and it is a miracle to be here. It's a miracle to get up every day and believe today I'm going to meet this existence, and I don't know what it is. But for those that have had those moments where the game change has happened because someone has passed, I want to say something about that. I want to say that part of the reason why the world is the way it is because it's time to stop. And it's time to consider the ones behind us, the ones that crossed over many years ago. Maybe I talk about this element because where I live, as I said to you earlier, in the west of Ireland, is a place where great sadness and a great people was pushed to the edge and forgotten about. And being forgotten about, something happened. Something that you don't get to read in books very often. Those books are on bookshelves in fancy institutions that many of us can't afford to go into. Or we may not have the status or family connections or royal connections to view this. But you take a couple walks down roads where there appears to be nothing, and you know. And I'm telling you guys now, there is something in the world where we have access to something we've never had access to before. And that is to the other world, to that world that I speak of crossing over to. As I said earlier, there is two worlds, parallel worlds, two Earths. In Ireland, they have the tribe of the Tuatha Dé Danann that was pushed underground. That was the tribe of the poets, those of beauty and wonder and myth and magic. But then there was the overculture, the one that lived on top of the land. Some would call it the Phomidians. There are other names. But the one above was always going, was always at war, was always carrying spears in its hand, looking for battle, looking for argument. The one that went underground chose to go underground. But being underground does not mean that you've given up or you've given in. It means that you're taking a different viewpoint. Those two worlds, some would call it dark and light. I believe those two worlds are one. We're looking for the triarch. The church calls it the Trinity. It's older than the church, that idea, which is that two worlds come together and make one new. But that new piece can only happen by those two worlds coming together. The realm of the one that battles and the one that views from afar. But you can't battle without the other. At least, if you battle without, that's through violence. That's through harm. And obviously the big discussion right now is that to get rid of the dark side, that parasitic side to humanity right now that has lived amongst us for so, so long. It forces us to check our own actions. And you say, oh, I don't have any of those actions. But you know, you do. It can be in a very minute way. We live in a world that's programmed into us very early on. I have, you don't have. I look this way, you look that way. I have this skin, you have that skin. I'm a man, I'm a woman. But who upholds that world if you don't want it? What happens when you walk away? What happens when you approach the world through feeling? Sure, we know loads of people that deal with the world through feeling. Get angry all the time. Cause a complete rampage. Are jealous, envious. And use that as weaponry. You don't need spears, swords, or guns to inflict. All of us have had words thrown in our direction that have basically killed our dreams at times, killed our relationships, killed our sanctuary where we feel at home and protected. All this is up in the air right now, though. And it feels anonymous. Now you can see why the masks have been so popular. Place it over. It's easier that way, isn't it? Maybe. But maybe not. Maybe just saying your piece is enough. Enough for other people to feel less alone. And to me, that is the great tragedy of the world, and how always has been, is that there's an isolated group of people in the world. They're thrown there, put away, except now it's moving into the realm where we all feel that. And that's convenient, because you begin to keep your mouth shut. For what reason? I guess I just want to say all this because I don't think it's a good time to keep your mouth shut anymore. I think it's time to have education, but the kind of education, of course, that comes from experience. I'm not talking about in school. I'm talking about the education you choose to give yourself, the time you choose to use your way. So I'm looking for others. And if you're out there, let me know, because I'm going to talk a lot more. Namaste.